And we thought that we could get a lot of ideas from the group. So the initial document that I was going to use. All right, James, this is where you're going to have to.
So you should you should be able to, if you hit that green share screen,
Right.
you should be able to. And by the way, everyone, I started recording this meeting.
And you're in your festive Santa hat. I better go find my festive stuff.
Yeah, I know. I'm working on this beard. I'm like, come on.
Mine went away. It was I couldn't handle it anymore.
Really? See, you know what, Rod? I don't get itchy. It's weird. Everybody says, does the beard get itchy? Does it get annoying?
It does for 2 weeks, and then after that, it got better, and then it's just too hot. I was like, eh.
Yeah, well, and I hope you enjoyed a big bowl of soup once you shaved it off.
I was telling Trupti in the other meeting that I shaved it off into a big biker handlebar mustache.
Yeah.
I see that.
That's
so
cool.
Nicole's upset with me because that was all of our Thanksgiving pictures, was me in this big old.
That's what you got to do. If you ever shave the beard, you absolutely have to have fun with it. You put so much work into it. You have to go with the stash or something.
Yeah, and it had the little Fu Manchu
chops.
here.
Yeah.
It was good.
Yeah, you got to do it.
Okay, gentlemen, let's try to get back on track here.
Okay.
Is my screen sharing?
It's not. When you hit that button, Bill, what does it tell you? Does it give you the option to share when you hit share screen? Does he ask you which one you want to share?
It says host disabled participant screen sharing.
Oh.
Did you guys claim? Oh yeah, you claimed
Yeah,
it.
I've got it. All right.
Well, while James is helping me on the technical side, I really believe that this group is knowledgeable enough that this first PowerPoint that I was going to take us through is not going to be that productive a use of our time, but I'll bring it up and we can see if anybody's interested in going through it, because I know several of us have seen it several times.
Try it now, Bill.
Uh-oh, someone else is pretending to be Amanda Sandoval.
Yeah, it's Naomi.
Oh,
Or-
I
no,
changed.
see there-
Naomi's changed.
No, it's really me.
Ah,
Yay!
will the real Amanda please stand up?
Oh my gosh.
Is it working,
I'm up.
James?
yes, it is.
Okay. So Elizabeth Weigel, and hopefully I'm pronouncing her last name correctly, has given a overview presentation about the Near Northwest Area Plan to a number of organizations. And I believe, as I said, that many of you have already seen this, although I've pared the presentation down. Is there anybody that hasn't seen it? Jonathan, have you had a chance to see it?
I feel like I have. This looks familiar.
Yes.
I haven't seen this.
No,
I
didn't
haven't
look
seen this
through it.
PowerPoint, but I'm happy to look at it on my own time if everyone else has seen it. So
I haven't seen it. When was it
Okay,
shown?
great. Well, let's take a couple minutes and go through it then. So I'm sure most of you are familiar with the Neighborhood Planning Initiative in terms of its overall plan. Every neighborhood in Denver over the coming, I think it's 15 years, is going to get the benefit of a new plan. The city is now into its second phase, and we are part of that second phase. And as you can see here, we will be in a planning process that includes Jefferson Park, Highland, Sunnyside, and Chafee Park. And we anticipate at this point it's going to start in February. Really, the purpose of the plan from the city's perspective is to create a shared vision and address the diverse needs and concerns of the community. And the plans are not going to actually set up new zoning, or be enacted from that perspective. It really is all about creating a vision. Naomi, Amanda, others, feel free to jump in. I'm not looking to give this presentation. I just want to get everybody oriented.
I would actually, would you go back to that, what plans don't do? I think that's a really important slide.
Please, yeah, go ahead.
For sure, I will, oops, sorry. So plans are not, they do not change regulations. And we want to emphasize this because I think setting expectations properly at the beginning is going to be really helpful. Because one thing we've noticed, now we've had a couple of neighborhood plans go through, we can see sort of the pitfalls that they've come into. And I found that some of it comes from not having the right expectation, or really expecting too much from the plan, that, oh, it is actually going to change zoning, or it's actually going to establish something, or a budget, or really deliver something. It's a guiding document. It provides the foundation for future projects, so that in the future the city could say, hey, there's plan guidance for doing a workshop on figuring out exactly where affordable housing should go in this neighborhood, and there's guidance for where it should go, but it lays the groundwork for future work, whereas I think some people expect that it actually does those things. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Naomi, along those lines, could you describe it similarly compared to Blueprint Denver, what Blueprint Denver does versus what this will do?
Good segue,
yes,
James.
and this is the slide. Yeah, perfect. I'm happy
Unintentional.
to do that, Bill, or you can.
Go for it, Naomi.
For sure. So that's a really good question, because what the small area plans do is they take Blueprint Denver and they customize it and adjust it for how it would actually apply to a small neighborhood, because Blueprint Denver is huge. It's very broad. So, and then there's multiple plans in it. One thing that our small area plans can't do is they can't reverse or go against anything that's in one of these citywide planning documents. For instance, citywide documents say ADUs should be allowed everywhere. We can't say in our neighborhood plan, we don't want ADUs ever anywhere in our neighborhood. Not saying that Sunnyside would do that, but that is actually an example that kind of comes up a lot. So we can fine tune citywide plans within a small neighborhood plan, but we can't undo them, if that makes sense.
Can I say one thing about that? One of the things that's important to know about citywide plans is, even though they don't change the zoning, they do set up the guidance for how you might change the zoning. So where
Yes.
a plan like Blueprint Denver is going to say where the density and whatever should go in the city, once we get to the small area plan, while we might not be able to go against that, we can set up a lot in the small area plan to say how that density might get expressed in our neighborhood. So like a good example is Jefferson Park used to look a lot like our neighborhood, and they upzoned it and really changed the character of it and created some real problems, I think, for a lot of people. And while the density might be a good thing, I think a lot of folks would look at what they did in Jefferson Park and say that's not a very good example of how to increase the density in a city, because they lost so much of their character. So it's really important to know we can get pretty detailed about our goals in the small area plan so that it informs the zoning.
That's a really good point. Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah. And another thing that the plan does compared to Blueprint Denver is we would talk about our parks and our infrastructure. So we can talk about where do we feel like we have in 2018, the voters voted in for they're calling it the Park Legacy Fund, but we have money now for parks to buy parks, so we can actually direct where do we want open space, how do we want it to look like,
And you don't get that in Blueprint Denver. You have tons, like you get that in the game plan of Denver, but instead it's all of the parts of each individual plan: transportation, infrastructure, parks and rec, and zoning, all within one plan for a neighborhood.
So Amanda, could you expand on that a little bit? So the Park Legacy Fund, so there's money out there. So is the MPI a vehicle that can be used to sort of tap into that money and sort of get to the front of the line with that? Like how would we use the MPI to basically bring some of that money into D1 or into Sunnyside more specifically?
So when we were working on the Globeville stormwater drainage plan, there was places where we talked about wanting to have green space. An example is the 39th channel. It's in Globeville, between Globeville area and Swansea, on the south side of I-70, but it's a stormwater drainage. And so we were able to use some of that Park Legacy money. So we could direct, where do we want more open space to go? Where do we need more open space to go? So then we have this, it's called the 5-year Park Legacy acquisition plan. We would direct that plan. We would add within the NPI parcels or vision to that bigger, the legacy fund. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. Under the context of the NPI though, can you, because that wasn't under neighborhood planning initiative, that was under something else.
No,
correct?
so the recommendations from the NPI would direct the parks acquisition plan. So the parks acquisition plan, they're always taking pieces from the neighborhood planning initiatives, taking guidance.
So, is it fair, Amanda, or anybody, to really say what we're doing with NPI is telling the city what's important to us and what are our priorities? It doesn't get us to have them spend money, but when the time comes to spend money, they're looking and saying, this is important. They want this and they want it this way. I mean, is that maybe a easier way to kind of think about NPI as the neighborhood telling the city our priorities for what we want the neighborhood to look like in all of those areas? We're not changing zoning, but back to Catherine's point, we could tell them what we're looking for. And if that means zoning changes are needed, that's something we could, move towards. But this one is much more of a, what do we want? And nothing's really off the table.
I would say that's a really good way to say it. So one of the examples is the East Central Plan, or the East Area Plan, just got adopted off of East Colfax. And from that plan, the Department of Office of Economic and Development, or DEDO development, whatever it's called now, keep changing the names, has 5 initiatives from the Office of Housing and Stability that they're working on with the neighborhood. And it came from the priority from the neighborhood plan. So yes, you're correct.
I don't know if it's still this way too, but usually you couldn't submit anything for the capital improvement plan, or there's an annual capital improvements plan that the city does, and it goes, it's budgeted years and years out. But the first step to getting something in a priority in a capital improvements plan would be to have it in a neighborhood plan. And then the other piece that it does is helps us identify a specific place where we might be able to inform partnerships that would help us do it. Like maybe there's a really important part of the neighborhood, like over by, I can't blank, what's the name of our public housing that's right down the street there?
Quig Newton.
Quig Newton, thank you. Maybe Quig Newton redevelops and it goes like higher density development, but more consolidated open space. And there's an opportunity to partner with, like, Trust for Public Land has an urban parks program, and we can leverage, several $100,000 from them if we have a capital improvements budget line item. And anything that's in the plan is going to give us priority for some of these bigger regulatory changes, investments, and partnerships. And we want to really focus on our implementation strategy to kind of really identify that roadmap. How do we get this done?
And if I can just add some personal comments on top of what James and Amanda and Catherine have been saying, is when I read through the East Area Plan, as a layperson, not knowing much about city planning, I find it to be a somewhat disappointing document. It's very long, but it doesn't feel as though it has as many specific recommendations that can be acted on as I, as a resident, might have wanted if I envision it being similar to what we're going to end up with 2 years from now. So
You've got a pretty good handle on that, Bill. That's exactly right. They're broader. They're not citywide plans. So they're kind of two plans that guide everything that happens in the city. The top one is the comprehensive plan. Under that is a subject matter plan, which would be like Blueprint Denver. It operates citywide. Then you get down to other subject matter things like the Parks and Rec plan, an infrastructure plan, and then you go to a finer grained level and you're talking about neighborhood plans. So they're big district plans, they're small neighborhood plans. Those are the ones where you're going to get the specific information about what are our budget priorities, our infrastructure investments, our policy recommendations that would lead to regulatory changes, regulatory tools, our zoning primarily, and then what are the partnerships that are going to help us pull some of this together. So like we might come up with a plan recommendation to establish a general improvement district to raise funds that would help us draw more parks money down. So if we're contributing, we're going to put ourselves in a better place to pull down money from the city coffers or state coffers if we're able to provide match. So we would identify really specific tools like that in the implementation strategy and in the recommendations of the plan.
Sure. So I'm going to try to go fast through some of these slides because I really do want us to talk about engagement and ideas that we might have on how to engage the community.
Hey,
this is
Bill.
all pretty. Hello.
Hey, Bill, it's Trupti. We mentioned something and I wanted to call out. We've got an individual who has moved in Sunnyside. She's on this call. That's Haley Jordal. I might be pronouncing that wrong. Haley actually works for DHA. I met her a few months back because DHA had bought that property on Federal and 70 and they were going to use it as a homeless shelter or COVID shelter and then redevelop. But I wanted to say that she's here and she's getting engaged with MPI. She's a Sunnyside resident. She's also with DHA. And then along with Catherine being, an ex-city planner, we've got some good people on our group. And I wanted to make sure y'all had a, introduction to Haley for these questions about things like Quig in the future. So.
Welcome,
hey everyone, thanks. Yeah, I'm a Sunnyside resident as well as a DHA employee and have been wanting to participate in the RNO for a while. So really looking forward to joining in the meetings in the future.
Thanks, Haley.
Thanks for joining us, Haley. We've been contemplating for quite a while now, really probably for the length of the pandemic, on how to next engage DHA. So look for your input there for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you.
Nice.
These are just some very top line statistics. I don't know that they're that important at this point. NPI topics. This really, I think, this slide, I felt that Elizabeth did a good job of separating the topics that are always covered essentially as foundational topics that are covered in NPI, and then focus topics that can be selected by the community. I think the important concept here is that we can select focus topics that we want to focus on. And I really want to reinforce that for the group. And as we engage a broader group, I think it's really important that we look to that broader group to give us ideas of things that should be focused on, and then also to get behind those things and give them leverage and weight.
And Bill, if we want to, I mean, our engagement, people showing up to these meetings, really, I find that to be our biggest challenge, right? This is such an important topic. We have 10 people on here, a few of us are actually on the board of the RNO. This is the area that I think we need the most help with, or figure out how to get as many people engaged into this process as possible. And what I wanted to offer up was, if we want to deploy surveys and such for trying to, inform and or ask them what's important, or have them check off what they'd like to participate in, just keep that open, that, those are easy things to do. We can do the survey for those kinds of things, but hopefully we can have hundreds of people at these meetings. That's kind of going to be the goal and the challenge for us, I think.
Yeah, I'm hoping to kind of dive deeper into that when we get to a couple of slides here that are specific to engagement. So just bear with these next couple of slides and we'll get there in a second. I think this slide really ties in with some of the previous conversations we've had in terms of how NPI plans update Blueprint Denver. The process has initially been talked about as being 18 months. I think the city is realistically realizing that if they're really going to get the engagement they want, and they're going to go through the iterative process that's needed, that something closer to 24 months is more realistic.
Can I ask
please
one
go ahead.
question about that? Can we make a request early on that our engagement does not include open houses? I just think open houses are a way to manufacture consent, and it's a terrible way to do neighborhood planning. And I really hope we don't allow the city to go down that road. I think what they've done, the way their lead up to Blueprint Denver was atrocious in terms of city planning. And I don't mean to be so harsh on the city, but it really, for that level of plan and for this fine-grained level of input, neighbors need to be in charrettes where we're talking to each other, sharing ideas. Will ultimately, it'll be messier and take more resources on the part of the city in terms of staffing it, but it will lead to better outcomes and easier adoption of the plan if we have better buy-in and more face-to-face communication between neighbors.
Thanks, Catherine. This is just a quick outline of the planning team. It's not just the community planning and development department. Other departments within the city will be actively involved, and we'll have specific representatives. There will be consultants involved, and then Amanda's office will, and I'm certain Naomi will be very deep into it. So it's really not one-dimensional. Okay, this is where I wanted to get to. Community engagement approach. Provide many ways of engaging in the planning process. I think that's really what I was hoping to get some energy around here. I think two things have already been mentioned. Catherine's comment about not feeling as though open houses were the best methodology, and Trupti's already talked a little bit about surveys. Maybe we can just start off by throwing out ideas people have or recommendations that people have for the best ways for us to reach out to the community.
So this is Trupti. The engagement part, like I said, I struggle with all the time, but an idea I had, or I think we could figure out how to build some momentum, is to potentially look at the different focus areas and find people to kind of say, yes, that's an area of interest for me. So we start building maybe teams of people that are around an area that they want to be in. So currently, there's a gentleman who, was concerned about safety in Sunnyside, and, he's got a lot of interest gathered. He's reached out to DPD, and he reached out to us. And one of the thoughts was, you're interested in safety. maybe you want to join the NPI process and bring your 100 people with you who want to talk safety. So something like that is one thing, or one way to organize maybe that I'm thinking of, is to bucket people and their interest into the groups that, and areas that they, care about the most.
Tripti had shared this idea with me about a week ago, and I think it's a fantastic idea. Safety would be one place to start. We might have another focus area that would be added green space in Sunnyside. We might have another focus area that is the station area. I think one way to bring people out is to find something that they can relate to and they care about. And that's what focus areas could be.
And one of the things that I'd like us to do is try to identify block captains or people who would be willing to canvass several streets every now and then, so that we get more participation and get the word out, and do that really early on. And I'm also really concerned about how does the participation proceed so that we don't get diluted by, like, Highlands has a huge operation and much more participation than Sunnyside does. And I get a little concerned about us getting diluted by folks in Highlands or Jefferson Park, and losing some of the focus on, our portion of the plan and what we want to see as our recommendations. Like, if we have a bunch of charrettes, how do Sunnyside people speak to Sunnyside people?
Hey, Catherine, I think that it might be a little bit in the weeds, and I totally get what you're saying, is how will we be able to voice what Sunnysiders want for Sunnyside and it not get diluted into the near Northwest that could be by, the most people there. I don't know that, that's maybe a question with the city to say, hey, we got to make sure this doesn't happen. So maybe that's kind of here's a concern for the process. We want to make sure that this doesn't, this doesn't happen, and how will we avoid that? So
yeah, honestly, like, I think the city is doing some, I'm not a fan of how they're doing this sort of cafeteria style approach to small area planning. The small areas are supposed to get down to pretty nitty gritty specific things. And if we're kind of getting absorbed by a larger area that might even have a more robust infrastructure in place, I don't want our issues to get kind of brushed aside, or for us not to get the focus that we want. So yes, it is a bit in the weeds, but I do think it needs to be considered.
I think that's addressed by adding very specific things that we want in the neighborhood and getting down to the details and the nitty gritty. And I think the quicker we can do that, the quicker we can get ahead of Highlands and some of the other neighborhoods. I think it gets down to that specificity. I don't know how getting and it's been discussed many times, the block captains. And I don't know how we're going to make that happen. I don't even know where to begin to get block captains and how we're going to get traction.
Yeah, we got to ask first. It's interesting. I don't know if you guys can see my background, because through some old documents, I actually have the 1992 Sunnyside neighborhood plan that I hope to scan and put it out there for others to see. And I haven't gone through it. And actually going through these boxes of history, block captains were something that we've done here. And they had huge lists of people who actually were engaged. So I don't know that it can't be done. We haven't tried, at least in the last few years. And I do think it takes a lot of commitment and work. But I kind of agree that I think we're going to need more engagement, and we're going to need as many people as possible. So if, is it block captains? Is it focus area group leads? I don't know.
Tripty, I think that comparison between block captains and focus area leads is a good discussion to have. I think the idea of block captains is fantastic. I just think that we're going to struggle to get coverage across the entire neighborhood of Sunnyside, and to the degree that we end up missing any areas, it has the potential to create inequality of input across the entire neighborhood. That's why I really like your idea of focus areas or target areas, because that way you use the topic, whether it's safety or green space or whatever it might be, to energize and bring people in. Whereas block captains, I think people have tend to have a reaction to it that we're asking them to do something. And once they take on that responsibility, they're stuck with it for a period of time.
And you can't compare the character of Sunnyside from 1992, Troopty, to the way it is now.
Oh, no, that's not my point.
I mean, you can't do that. Take that from somebody who lived here for a long time.
Oh, yeah. No,
can't.
that's not what I'm saying. I was saying that this is an interesting document that nobody in our current board has seen, and maybe we should all look through before we embark, as we embark. It's just an interesting historical document. Let's put it that way. That's all I was saying with that. I think it was probably more in the 2000s they were doing the block captain, not back in 1992. So again, I think at this point,
I don't remember a block captain ever coming to my door.
So what, I mean, let's not get too hung up on block captains and focus areas and surveys. What other ideas do people have? What are some, I mean, there are some standard approaches that the city will use, but what other ideas might we have that would work better?
Well, I think one thing, and it sort of, I hope this addresses both ideas or both questions, is that there are, within our area plan, we're going to have things that carry over through all 4 of the neighborhoods.
Correct.
But we're also going to have things that are specific to each neighborhood. You know, there'll be an issue about a plot of land in Jefferson Park that we don't really have intimate knowledge of, and there'll be an issue in Sunnyside that they don't have intimate knowledge of. So I think we need to create a structure that has sort of a broader view and then the ability to focus down. And so people who want to participate could say, I want to participate in things that are important to the whole 4 neighborhood part of this plan. And other people who could say, I only want to participate in this section because it's local to me, it's 44th, it's Tennyson, it's something like that. And so one way to do that would be to preliminarily outreach to the other neighborhood associations.
We're already there.
So that we can create the broader context and then decide what our local focuses would be here in Sunnyside. And then we could get Sunnysiders who wanted to do either or when we do our outreach.
I feel like that's a bit of overreach on the larger group that's going to be working on this MPI. This specific group is going to bring our recommendations to a steering committee, Amanda's office, CPD. And from there, it will be, I feel it's their responsibility then to take our directive or our opinions, our community outreach, our feedback, and then mesh that with what they're getting from the other neighborhoods within near Northwest.
Yeah, because I even look at any specific focus area, whether it be Parks and Rec or it be density or just pick whatever, any focus area, each of the 4 areas are still, you know, there could be some commonality, but they could all want something slightly different based on, you know, things like how much saturation there already is in terms of development versus not. We may be very unique because we've got the station area plan and a light industrial zone that is probably going to be changing, whereas the other area, 1 or 2 may not have it. Like Chaffee probably doesn't have the same thing. So yeah, I mean, again, I think our biggest challenge first is how do we get people to show up to our meetings, the NPI meetings and that general communication plan or strategy is kind of what is the first step. We could figure out some of that organization, like how do we break up the groups, focus groups otherwise. But I think our first challenge is that we can't get more than 10 to 20 people to show up on any call. And if that's all we get, that's going to be a problem. I do think we're going to get more than that, but really, what would make a group representative? That's kind of what we would hope for, is a representative group.
I think those were excellent comments, Trupti. Amanda, Naomi, you hear us, kind of wandering around and talking through some things. Any directional comments you can give us?
I wanted to actually, I know we moved on to the topic, but just to say one thing briefly, that I put in the chat as well about the whole block captains versus focus groups area. I don't think that they're mutually exclusive. I think that they complement each other, and that there will be people who you can get with block captains that'll work, and people to get with focus areas. One really important thing to do with all these measures of outreach is beforehand to have goals for accountability of what expectations, what do you want to see come out of this? I'm a little cautious about the topic areas in terms of, if you find someone who is extremely passionate about a specific topic, the people that they might gather to spread the word with might be those who agree with them and feel the same way about that specific topic, and you might not hear, if they feel strongly about like this park, you might get mostly their friends and the people who feel the same way, versus a more general sense of what maybe opponents feel about it, or certain populations, so it's just, that's not a bad thing if you are aware of it and take it into account. So just to kind of constantly have points of check-in and evaluation, and we can do that with you too, like just have check-ins and be like, hey, so like, how is this going? Do we feel like we're just hearing one thing from people, or is it all just this one type of person that's coming out this way? And we can respond to that throughout the process.
How are things being handled as far as like, I'm super down on the city, so I will just own this. And I do not like the direction the city's been going in for years. But it has been increasingly giving access to a very few number of voices, mostly kind of this revolving door of the same old. I can tell you a handful of lobbyists that are always participating in things, a handful of developers. And I want to make sure that the steering committee on this thing is not populated with a bunch of developers. I think it's a conflict of interest if you have a financial stake in the direction a neighborhood of residential investors want a neighborhood to go in. To me, it's completely inappropriate for developers to be part of the decision-making group. It's fine if they want to participate and provide input and give the neighborhood things to think about, but the people who are here doing neighborhood cleanups, maintaining their properties, we're doing a lot of investment on a daily basis because we live here. And, for someone to come in who's treating the neighborhood like a commodity, for their voices to have an equal resonance as the people who are giving money to the schools, building playgrounds, cleaning up the neighborhood, maintaining their properties, that drives me crazy. And it is so standard operating procedures for the city of Denver to get lists of people to participate from lobbyists and the development community. And so I feel very protective about our neighborhood, because I know from what's set up in Blueprint Denver, they're going to want to upzone our neighborhood substantially.
So Catherine, one of the things that the city, we met with them, and just to go back, because I think Jonathan had a question about, engaging with the other RNOs. The 4 RNOs are already meeting in conjunction with Amanda Sandoval. So with that, we want to get in front of stuff and we want to have a communication strategy, you know, an engagement strategy. We want to share with one another what's working, things like that. But one of the things that the city is going to be doing is sending out a survey. And I think they're also going to be looking for people who are interested in participating in the steering committee. But ideally at the end, I think Amanda and the city will have some take on what they want that steering committee to look like and how many people from the different neighborhoods. Like, so let's say, and I'm making this number up, maybe it's 4, maybe it's 6, but if there's going to be a steering committee and with the 4 neighborhoods, each of them get 4, each of them get 6, whatever that is. And then the compilation of that needs to be representative. And actually, in some ways, you know, the minority needs to be represented that never shows up, that isn't included if we don't bring somebody and put them on a steering committee. So to me, I think that inclusion and diversity piece, hopefully, Amanda, for you, that we're thinking about the types of people on a steering committee that work and live in that space, in that not potentially nonprofit, but really speaking to the minority voice that doesn't show up on these calls. I show up on these calls and maybe I'm not the, you know, I'm not the only voice and the wrong voice to represent them. So
I think both of you have a really good point, Catherine. I think that's your point. I think that's why we have we're getting together early and we're doing this without a lot of guidance from CPD. We were meeting with I've met with CPD with the RNO leaderships. And other than that, I'm looking to have each registered RNO figure out their own little engagement plan. And so that, because you all know the neighborhood best. So that's why we all need to lean on you all to make sure that we're having really good engagement and I'm not interested in having the same people at the table the whole entire time or developers. But some of the developers do live in the neighborhood. So we'll have to weigh that. And I want a diverse group of people. And Bill, to your point about how do we get, you know, when you were asked what my thoughts are, sometimes what happens is the steering committee, I'll admit it happens with my colleagues and I. Kevin Flynn, for example, he's the representative for Denver City Council on the stormwater drainage. I can't remember the whole entire name of it, but I never get updates. I don't know what that committee does. I don't know what they're talking about. So you all want to make sure that whoever is your representatives on the steering committee, that they're being responsible and they're being a conduit back to give you all the information, because that's what doesn't happen in these processes is they don't give like a bi-monthly update and they're like, hey, we're talking about zoning right now. For those of you who are at zoning, make sure you're at this next meeting. You know, it has to go both ways.
Well, and I think maybe something that's gone without saying that I should bring up is, and I'd like the group's input on this, is from my perspective, NPI, and I know James shares this perspective, NPI is a hugely important process. And really, when you look at the monthly meetings that we have as SUNY PCD, from here on out, it's my expectation that we're going to carve out some portion of every single meeting for the next 2 years, whether it's for an engagement activity or an update activity or whatever that might be. You know, we're going to have monthly touch points with NPI at our monthly meetings. And we may have more meetings like this one that'll be strictly focused on NPI. I mean, I don't know how that'll unfold. Is there anybody that doesn't feel as though NPI warrants that kind of attention?
And I'll just add, because we're down to 40 minutes here, and I will, speaking bluntly, feel like this meeting is a failure unless we come up with some specific items that we need to do to engage the community. Because I'm really disappointed that there's only 10 people on this call. And, you know, maybe it's a failure of us to get the word out as we should, but that's what we're asking for here, because we're already looking at our next meeting being in January, and MPI for Near Northwest is kicking off in February. So we are already out of time. So we need to figure out how, because, you know, and I reached out to a number of people personally, asking them to join this meeting, none of which are on this call. So either they don't care, which I don't think the case, they don't recognize the importance is not being communicated to them, maybe by failure by myself, but we need to figure that out in this meeting with the remaining 40 minutes that we have. And COVID adds another level of difficulty, because otherwise we could do our normal SUNY sippers and have a table set up to engage people there. We could set up a table at local restaurants or whatnot, you know, or even push it during our events, but we can't do that now. And I don't know that knocking on doors is going to be the answer either, particularly given the holidays and so forth. So seriously, group, let's come up with some specific things that we need to do to get this word out, because right now it's not happening.
Well, what did we do to get the word of tonight's meeting out? That should be our baseline.
Not
Well,
enough, I think.
So we have a distribution list for the PCD, Jonathan, of about 160 people that email goes out to with the agenda for today's meeting, the Zoom details and whatnot. That unfortunately is the only thing we did, is that one email blast that goes out. Now it goes out to 160 people, but other than that, there was nothing that we did.
So
we've got to figure out a way to grow our email distribution list, because I mean, I'm pretty dialed into the neighborhood, and I feel like I got no notice for this meeting for such an important topic.
Yeah.
And I feel like there needs to be some sort of schedule created that lists the meetings, how to get involved, and then it needs to go out as a neighborhood mailer and reach every single household. Or maybe we hire Independence House to canvas, or I don't know what, but potentially we could purchase email lists.
So I will, okay, there's a couple of things, and I think maybe more than Bill and I kind of look at our entire mailing list and our entire marketing structure, let's say as an RNO. We have about a list of 800 or 900 people. However, they don't necessarily have to live in Sunnyside, but most do. That could coincide with the 160. We haven't done an analysis to match up emails to say, you know, there's an overlap of whatever. Next door in Sunnyside has about almost 4,000 people. Next door needs to be utilized. I do agree that this topic will require us to not send an email out the week of, but way far in advance, and that needs to be scheduled out so people are thinking second Thursday, there it is. We want to make that the thing, and if MPI is going to be on every single one, we could be, you know, we could put that out there. So there's those pieces. Now onto the mailer, we need to recognize that a mailing to 5,000 households will cost us $2,000, maybe a little less, $1,200, $1,300 are in mailing alone. The rest, the 700 would be like the postcard. So there's that. We could potentially lower that by a flyer. And I think Amanda has, you know, some contacts. David Zabetos has a contact he's given me. So we're looking into that. It could be more of a $600, $700 type of thing that's truly a mailer. But anyway, I want to make sure you guys kind of understood that. So between Nextdoor and then our Facebook has about 2,300, under 3,000, around 2,500 followers, people who like. So that those are our channels. Mailing is the most expensive. Yeah. And I know the city, well, I think Amanda's office is going to be spending money on mailers. And I think we need to figure out how to use those funds you know, the best we can. And obviously the very first one needs to be, it's kind of the most important, the one that says, this is coming, it's important, kind of like a call to action type of messaging, doesn't go into weeds at all, but more like, what do you want your neighborhood to look like in the next 20 years? You know, is this important to you? This is how you can participate, show up, and we should have that second Tuesday, it's happening. It'll be a topic that's covered every single time. So that's kind of, you know, that's kind of at least just a background on some of our ability to outreach and what's available.
On the mailer, can we get some city money for that, Amanda? Or do we need to look to the SUNI to contribute or something?
I've advocated, I've asked, I've pushed, and with, so just so you all know, every year, like I always have planned to give money to Sunnyside, right? Last year I gave each RNO $1,000. I had to give almost $5,000 back of my $265,000 budget because of COVID. So we got a briefing today from our budget office, and our numbers for what we were projecting for 2021 are really bad. So I have money set aside in my budget for mailings, for everything that you just said, Trupti, for Sunnyside flyers, for mailers, to partner with you all. So like, if, to Catherine, to your point, if we feel like Highland is dominating the conversation and we need to get more activity in Sunnyside, I'll pay for a mailer. You all put it on there. I'll just pay for it. But another tool that we have is texting. Texting's super cheap, and we can do it. We can pay for a service, and you can dial in people who live within your neighborhood, and you can send them a text the night of the meeting with a Zoom link. Hey, join this meeting. I mean, I know all of you probably got texts during the campaign election season. It's another really easy tool for people, and it connects to your calendar. So if you text someone and you say, join us on this day, you click that if you have an iPhone or a smartphone, and it clicks, and it's super cheap. It's like, I can't remember how many cents it is per text, but it's really affordable.
I mean, I think Remind 101, which is a similar texting service to what you're talking about, Amanda, is free. That wouldn't cost us anything.
Yeah, we could look into that. We could look into, and then I know I paid for, when I was campaigning, I did some texting. I didn't do it as much because I felt like it was kind of annoying, but it works for other things. I know Denver Street Partnership has done it to get activity for the community networks that's going on, the bike lanes. So yeah, we can all partner together.
So Amanda,
so do we have to have the phone numbers of Sunnyside residents, or do we just identify a geographic area and this service just knows?
Yeah, we pay for the service.
Everyone.
Yeah, you pay for it, and you do a geographic area based on zip code, or you target based on voter registration, which are based on census blocks.
So you know one of the things you just brought up, and I hadn't thought about this, or maybe I had, and you reminded me of it, which is that there are other nonprofits potentially who may have an interest. And again, you know, think of it, you know, so Denver Street Partnerships, right? Interest in biking, rolling, walking. And that ties into sustainability a little bit. I'm wondering if, you know, if we bring them into the fold, they bring some resources with them as part of them helping us to kind of discuss these things. Maybe they're a little bit more subject matter experts, let's say on a group that's all interested in biking, that nonprofit can become a subject matter expert, and potentially we can leverage their resources. That's one of the things, you know, that's a possibility I hadn't thought of before, because I think they would be interested in seeing some things that I think there might be some alignment with a lot of people about, you know, streets are for people, not cars, you know, not everybody feels that way. And then Amanda, I don't know if you're at liberty to discuss this now, but at some point, you know, what kind of money do you have? And the reason I'm thinking about that is, you know, the reason I'm thinking about that is if we only have limited resources, we use them for the most important piece, whether that's right in the beginning of catching, these people early on to engage versus another time. So it may be important from that aspect. If we only have, let's say we only have money for 2 mailers, well, we have to be really specific about when we use them, because obviously resources are limited. And
Yeah.
So I don't have right now today on the second week of December, we don't have the exact amount of money that I'll have for my 2021 budget, unfortunately. We have a budget working group working on this. So I'm supposed to have an idea of what my budget will be. And then I have to pay all my staff. And so there's a couple moving parts, but Gina and I have been working on it, being more proactive than probably other offices. So I don't know the exact amount right now, Trupti, but we are working to figure that out. Unfortunately, what happened in 2021 is the furlough days and some of the salaries cuts that we've had to experience, they impacted our office. So instead of us giving back like 10% of my budget, they're taking it on the front end in 2021, and we don't know that exact amount right now. I know it sounds crazy that we don't know that exact amount, but we've been asking, but we don't know that exact amount. It's insane.
Yeah, I think, and you know what, that the other piece of it, and I do this primarily for our R&O, is I also try to fundraise, right? So, if we think about how much money we have versus how much money we need, we can start kind of looking towards deeper pockets in the neighborhood to help us do this, like they would if we were trying to throw an event or a party. So it is something we can think about as also a fundraising activity, to get some money from, local folks who actually have it. So that's the reason I'm kind of asking about the costs and money.
Okay, so Catherine, you mentioned 2 things in the chat. I was hoping you could expand because I'm unaware of them. What is VAN? And then could you tell us a little more about Loose Tasco?
So, okay, the VAN is just what like the Dems and the Republicans all have a voter database that they keep track of voter records. And so it's a great way because you can get house numbers and like information about how active they are as voters. And they're typically like, it's going to be mostly Democratic voters, either registered Democrats or I don't know if there's one for like independents, but you can definitely get them for registered Democrats, and I'm sure the Republicans have one too. And then Luz Stasko, she's a PR specialist who's been around North Denver for a really long time. She does all of the PR for a lot of the restaurants like Little Man Ice Cream and a lot of the kind of fun, cool local businesses. And she might have some really good thoughts too on cross-promotional strategies that could help. Like if you come to if you take the survey, then you could get something at local restaurants, and that might help our local restaurant business too. So she might have some good ideas about ways we can do sort of cross-promotional things.
Do you have her contact details?
She's really easy to find. I know she's sick right now, so I don't know.
Do, guys. I've reached out to her in the past with not a lot of luck to try to get together with her, because she was doing a Sunnyside merchant kind of thing, and she had a Highlands merchant kind of promotion. All of that has kind of been.
She's sick. She's quite ill right now, fighting a hard disease, so she might be off the radar, but she may have somebody who she could refer us
to. I do have her contact, by the way. I'll send it to you again. I don't know, if we'll get a response, but hopefully we will. But if not Lou, there are other marketing type of people locally that we could talk about. And Catherine, to your point of incentives, I agree. And I think the incentive piece could be somewhat easy. Typically, we do get a lot of gift certificates from our local, restaurants to give away as incentives. And, again, I don't know about 2021, but at least in a normal year, non-pandemic, we'll get a couple of $1,000s worth of gift certificates from our businesses that we can use as an incentive to take a survey or to be.
That's assuming we'll get the information out to people to even know to do the survey through which they might get a gift certificate, because it didn't work for our Sunnyside annual meeting. All
Yeah,
right?
well, ours,
I have a problem. We're asking people to get involved in the community, and I hate throwing gift cards at them. It's just, we shouldn't have to do that.
You know what? That may be true, but if you talk to people who are in the engagement space, incentives work. I worked for a healthcare company, and they spent a lot of money on incentives so that people could take the surveys of data points that they needed. And again,
I'm less, can I say one thing about that, Trupti? I'm less concerned about the incentives and more concerned, like, I have a little seasonal business. I would chip in a couple $100 if my little thing was going to get a little more advertisement and get my logo on a flyer that goes out or something.
We do this kind of stuff already. Just so you know,
I think I really believe the desire is there amongst individuals in the neighborhood. I think we're not getting the word out, and we're facing that on the Sunny board as well. I mean, we're just having a hard time getting the word out. So I think we've come up with some really good ideas here, but we need to put them into
Let me just say this one thing. Like, if it costs $2,000 to get a mailer out to the whole neighborhood, there's no way I can afford to spend $2,000 to get a mailer out. But if there's something that says join these local businesses and shop with these local businesses, that gets their logo out, and everyone chips in $200 and you get 10 little logos on the bottom of a flyer, and it's the businesses that are encouraging people to participate. I mean, there's a way to do this where I think it would get some activity with people, and where we could get money from folks in strategic ways.
This is how we run everything at SUNY, just so you know. We get business sponsorships for everything. We spend about $12,000 to $15,000 to $20,000 a year on what we do, and all of that money is actually raised. So that model of reaching out to businesses saying, stick a coupon in here, put a whatever, that is what we've done, and that is the way to do it. However, I will say that it takes energy, and
Yes,
that's where our board and probably every other board, fails
we
to
struggle.
do it better or more because it takes time and effort. Currently, I do that a lot, and right now with the pandemic, I'm a little less comfortable seeking out money from small businesses that they don't actually have. So I think about the larger, deeper pockets who are willing to just say, here's $2,000 for one of your, however, that's a model we have used. But again, if mailers work, if incentives work, maybe having Amanda Sandoval's name on it works better than having Sunnyside's name on it, or the city's name on it instead of Sunnyside. So
I think I agree with James, though. I think the intent is there with people if we can get the message out. And I don't know about spending money for mailers and stuff. I think, like with everything else, one of the first places you go is just engaging every single social media platform that we have access to. And that's cheap. It's free in most cases. There's, and developing content that's engaging that people see everywhere. I mean, they need to see it everywhere they go around the neighborhood so that they know what's going on, and engaging content that gets them interested in it, whether it's graphics and models of the neighborhood, or pictures, or people talking that would interest them, and doing small little short 30-second videos on Facebook or Twitter or whatever, or like you said in Nextdoor. That's the way we're going to get people engaged. Because I'll be honest with you, I don't pay attention to the little glossy placards too often that come in the mail. You get 50 of them a week from so many different things, and they cost a lot of money. but you know, a 15 to 30-second video about my neighborhood might catch my attention and get me engaged if we can get it out to people. And there has to be somebody that knows how to leverage that, because all of those tools get automated, you know, at some level. Like I just figured out how to do my what is it, Instagram thing, where it just posted automatically to my Facebook page, you know, right from my website. So I only have to create the content once and it just multiplies itself. So I think that's the way you have to do it.
Well, the video is a good idea in terms of something we actually don't do very much of. We've done it on events, and you know, somebody will take a video of here's something happening at such and such location and kind of share it. And you know, that does get a lot more, I think, hits. You know, again, I think part of it is you know, like La Raza got tons of hits. It didn't matter who shared it, right? Because this is something. So I think we have to figure out how to make it exciting and kind of that call to action. And we may need to hire someone who has this expertise because our board doesn't.
But we need somebody who's like 24 years old and makes TikTok videos.
Right. Well, just things that reinforce the brand and the message that this is important. And if, you know, what did they say? You have to get something in front of somebody 3 times before they really get engaged with it. And so if we're really trying to think of it in those terms, one flyer is not going to do it. It's got to be, they've got to see it on on their Facebook, at the grocery store, on a billboard, and then the flyer is like the 3rd time they see it, and then it sticks with them a little bit.
Can we get some sort of permanent display, or like for the next couple of years that's at Chaffee Park? Because I can't think of any place that's more central to our neighborhood, right there coming down 44th, staring at a big sign that says something about the neighborhood.
It's the center of our neighborhood. Should be the focal point of our community.
That's a great idea. I kind of
and
like.
There are all kinds of things that there are groups, like there's a group in New Zealand called Gap Fillers that has all kinds of cool and crazy ways that engage people actively, like what Rodney was saying. Rodney, why'd I call you Rodney?
That's okay, I go by Rodney too. Otherwise people call me Rob, Roy, Ron.
So here's
something
else I started to do, and I'll explain why, and maybe there are ways, even with the pandemic, that we could potentially do that. I think almost nothing beats face-to-face, right? Now, granted, we're not having happy hours, we're not getting together. That does not mean we can't put up a table at a different coffee shop in the neighborhood on a Saturday or a Sunday with a flyer we just simply hand out with, you know, clean hands. But what I had done last year for the music festival, for Sunnyside Music Festival, I got a table, I got city to develop some collateral, and then I was taking down, and I actually had Cortland Heiser there and Eugene from our neighborhood talking about the process, and I collected 40 signatures to get, and now I'll throw those 40 signatures into one of our databases as we start targeting NPI discussions. But what about, people, and I'm gonna say people by, our SUNY board as a start, actually being in front of, doing this in front of a coffee shop. Again, just another cheap, free, idea, but, something different, not social media, not a letter, face-to-face. That's another thing possible.
If I can interrupt the brainstorming for just a second with a question. I hear a lot of great ideas here, and I'm taking a lot of notes. And I'm going to speak for Troop D and James. Hopefully I won't pay dearly for this. But as the board members on this call, and actually I guess I'll include Philip as well, what I'd like to ask of Jonathan and Catherine and Rod and Haley as the non-board members on this call, if the 4 of us, Philip and Troop D and James and I, took all this input and created an outline of a communication plan, would you guys be willing to get on another call in a couple of weeks? And
Absolutely.
And then
Whatever you need.
maybe between the 8 of us and maybe gathering a few more people in the interim, and then using Naomi and Amanda as well, we can start to take all of this, put it into an actionable format, and divide it up so that it's doable. And if all of the people on this call are willing to do a little bit, I think we can get there. But we've got to get it organized. Does that sound like the beginnings of an action plan?
Yes, I like it, Bill.
Yes,
Okay.
thanks.
Yeah, that makes
I
sense.
support that.
All right. So keep
Could I
going with
ask
the
a
brainstorm.
question?
And
I know we haven't gotten through the PowerPoint yet. The East Area Plan is on the agenda, and I've barely had a chance to crack the surface of that plan. It's a really beautiful looking plan. I don't know what it does in terms of substance, but if anyone on this call is familiar with that or has really dug into that, what are some of the concrete results, the concrete recommendations, some of the victories or the wins that came out of that process? Do we
So
have
I'll-
that familiarity with that?
Sorry, I can jump in that I made this offer to Honey, and I'll make it to you too. I'm gonna be diving into one of the 3 plans that's been adopted. They have to decide which one it is, probably East or East Central. And I offered to hold a little session where we walk through it. And I've read them on the surface level. They're hundreds, they're so long. So it'll be helpful for me too. But literally to have, a portion of one of the PCD meetings, or the whole one, depending, and to actually go through it, screen share, be like, okay, this is how this chapter is, and call out some of the really interesting things that they did in it that I do know about. I know that they've done some innovative stuff in it. So if that sounds interesting,
Yes.
I'd be happy.
Naomi, that would be great. I was planning on attempting to do some of that. I assume you can all see my screen. This is the East Area Plan that's on my screen, and Naomi, I'm sure, could do 100 times better than what I was going to do in going through the plan. But I do think if all of us are interested in being active in NPI, the earlier that we can all get a little bit educated as to what comes of these plans, how is it structured, and what does it do and what doesn't it do beyond an initial PowerPoint. Naomi, I will definitely take you up on that offer, and anybody else that wants to join me is more than welcome.
Oh, absolutely. I'm there too.
Yeah, if you want to just, the January PCD meeting, or the February one, if there's time, or we could hold a special extra session. So
if you can spare the time, I would love to have a special session, because it's not that I want to exclude the entire PCD, but if we've got a committed group here of 8 or 10 or 12 people, I think it would be most productive to really get all of us knowing what we need to know.
I am fully committed to helping spread the word about this, but I want to be educated myself and be able to articulate to others in the community why it's important to be part of this and what the outcomes could be.
So that's
what if you all created so one of the things that I have found that works best is, what if you all, part of your campaign, worked on a script and each of you did a video? So there's this group called I Am Denver, and they've done videos. They did a video of my daughter actually graduating virtually. But what if you all came up with a script, or we had Lou help us with the little script, and each of you took a part of it and videoed it, and we edited it, and you all sent that out to your neighbors. And that was a reason why you should all get involved, because you all live here. You all should be the carriers of this message.
I like that idea of doing a video and then posting it on, the few channels that we have, and some of them, like next door, it's pretty broad. It's it's broader than our distribution lists. Next door is. So I like the idea, and I like the idea of doing it in different formats, because some is appealing, whatever. But to your point of the script, it needs to be something that everybody understands what it is. So I think that script is a good idea, like a one pager about NPI and why it's important. And that becomes the thing that we can then distribute, even if it's in front of a store, or even if we put it onto their, board or something. Well, that's not happening right now, but it could be something that we can distribute easily and also educate people who become, let's call them ambassadors for this, that they can very easily understand and also, share out with their neighbors or friends or anybody who asks.
I think part
Amanda,
of what we're going to need to create is a message that's very simple, because this is actually a pretty complicated topic. And to try and explain to people who've never been part of it that this is subservient to Blueprint Denver, but works in conjunction with blah, blah, that's very complex. And we're going to need to find a way to make it really soundbite easy for people.
I think this is back to what I was saying earlier. Hey, do you care about what your neighborhood looks like for the next 20 years? Do you want to tell the city what's important to you? It's kind of like that simple. Well,
Yeah.
NPI is your answer.
People have certain passions, whether it be safety, sustainability, green space, parks, bike lanes. And I think we
Walkability,
incorporate all those things,
Yeah, we
because
can throw that in.
everybody's going to have their own little passion. I think generally just saying, what do you want your neighborhood to be? People be like, a great neighborhood. It has to be, well, no, I can't stand the fact that I can't get to Fox 41st Station on my bike without fearing for my life. That's the kind of stuff that people are going to say, well, that's how I want to get involved. I think so. It has to include that, but
simple soundbite, call to action, easy. I guess those are the things that I think that in terms of that initial messaging for getting people through the door, I'll call it, we got to work on that. So now who has the expertise here? Who wants to take a stab at this?
well, I think that's a little premature, or Haley, you haven't had a chance to say much. Can I just see if you've got any thoughts or comments?
Oh, I've been listening in as a new person to the group. But one thing that I was thinking that I could contribute is just as a new person who, thinking back, I mean, via my work, I'm interested in this topic. So maybe more natural to gravitate to it than other people. But I could do some thinking on how I originally came across, like SUNY's work. I think it might have been through Facebook or through Nextdoor. So could do some thinking about the channels that I've seen this group on, and ways that I've seen the messaging work as someone who hasn't participated in the past, and just give some thought on how we could get the word out more broadly. So
Please.
But yeah, listening in as a new person.
And
that's important, actually. Thank you.
And Naomi, would it be most productive for you if you combine us with Honey in taking us through the East Area Plan?
I think I would have. They're gonna do it at their PCD meeting that they have.
Okay.
So I think I'll probably do separate ones. Plus, if we do yours afterwards, I'll be better at it probably.
Well, my next question may contradict with that. Is I know that you've got some time you're taking off with the holidays. Is there a chance we can do it fairly soon, or what would be good timing for you?
I don't think it'll be possible until January. I know I'm kind of pushing to, or it's about a lot of pressure on me to get it ready for their PCD meeting, which is January, I think the second week of January. So if we could do it after that, that would be best. Because yeah, we are taking a much needed break soon.
Okay.
But in the meantime, homework for everyone can be to flip through the East Area Plan and kind of read it for yourself a little bit, and then that'll actually have us have a lot more productive conversation too. If people have a little bit of familiarity with it, we can kind of point more to what the questions are.
We've got 5 more minutes, everybody. Anybody have any ideas that haven't been brought up yet, or comments they'd like to make?
Just as far as timing of our next meeting, so I'm going to take the texting thing on and figure out a way that we can get numbers within this district and get it texting blast out. I think that was an excellent idea. So I'm gonna do a little bit of legwork on that to figure that out. I think the voter database is also a fantastic idea. I don't know if anybody wants to look into that as far as how we can get access to, because I agree with Catherine's point. Individuals on that registered voters are going to be more likely to get involved in an issue such as this, or a movement such as this. So is anybody interested in taking that on? The other thing is, I think we need to get on Instagram. I think that a lot of people, Facebook is dying a little bit and Instagram is where it's at. So next door, Instagram, Facebook, carpet bomb. So that's another thing. And then when would we need to get an ad into North Star, Troopy? We didn't discuss North Star, but I think we could get something in from a timing standpoint.
Always at the beginning of the month. I'm trying to think of
Okay.
this cycle, but we can find out. I mean, we could probably get in on the January 1. The issue with North Star, and I'm gonna go a little further and say, why don't we get David to actually do a story on Near Northwest
Great
as a
idea.
story and not necessarily a 2x2 ad that could get lost. So I would say
That's fantastic idea, Troopy.
yeah, that would get more hits, I think, than an advertisement. So I will reach out to David and see if he wants to do a story for the Near Northwest. We can get Amanda Sandoval, we can get other folks to kind of, talk about the process or whatever. So I could take that on.
So James and Tripti, are you guys okay in the next couple of weeks finding some time for the three of us to try to put this into outline form and get it back out to the group?
Yeah, I'm around.
And Philip as well.
And Philip, thank you.
Yeah, I was gonna say you're welcome to have me involved or delegate tasks for me and
You're
others
hired.
in this call.
So let me understand, Bill. This would be us for putting together somewhat of a timeline or schedule.
Well, I mean, I think of it as an outline. We've had a lot of, I think we've gotten a lot of good ideas. But I think we've got to put them into an outline, talk amongst ourselves as to where some of the priorities should be, and then feed it back out to the group and ask this group of 10 and maybe a broader group if we can get it, to commit to something that they're interested in doing to help us, that's on that outline. I mean, we've got to create a structure that this group can work in, and we've got to do it in such a way that each person knows what they need to do, that it's a small enough piece that it's workable and they're truly willing to do it and get it done.
Jonathan has great notes in the chat.
Yeah.
So if you all are keep an eye on that chat, I keep going there because he's doing a great job breaking things down in the chat box.
Yep, that's good. We weren't thinking about, news, but hey, it's possible. I think, why not? I mean, I think an easy story would be, look, us four neighbors are getting ahead of the, pardon my French, shit show in other areas, and this is how we're doing it. We might be able to get a story.
Well, and especially if it's like walkability, bikeable, sustainable, like there's topics like that, we should easily be able to get a story on Colorado Public Radio or something like that, a short, they're always looking for content that's like local and, oriented.
I can contact Denver Street Partnerships. I just finished taking a advocacy course with them. So, and again, on the pieces that they would focus on, they'd probably be willing to help in that focus area. So I will.
Catherine looks like she wants to say something.
Go ahead.
Yeah, some of these advocacy groups, I've got a real issue with them. They're a lot of them get contracts with the city and they don't actually advocate for the things they're supposed to be advocating for. So like Walk Denver is the biggest bullshit organization in this town. They hardly do anything that would promote really radical walkability in the city of Denver, like every other global first-class city. So that's what I'm talking about. The city operates on a revolving door of lobbyists and groups that get anointed as, the whatever group on whatever particular issue, and then they get contracts through the city. It's ridiculous. So I am not for turning over those sorts of things to groups that are reliant on, that have a financial interest in not, you know, pushing, rocking the boat a little bit at the city of Denver. I mean, there's some, the city is stagnant. We are doing so very few things that other first-class global cities are doing. It's crazy to me. So I would like to see us be a little more creative than just turn it over to the people getting contracts from the city of Denver to advocate for this, that, or the other.
Well,
taken, Catherine. My point is how
Sorry to be so angry about it.
My point is how we use them, not the other way around. But again, you know, good point that not all of them are worth partnering with.
so I want to be respectful of everybody's time, and we've reached our 8 o'clock end. What the four of us will be doing is getting an outline together and feeding it back to this entire group. I would like to ask all of you, once you've received that from us, if you know some additional people that you think would have some energy, even if it's just one or two, please forward it on. And what I'd like to do is 2-ish weeks from now, try to reconvene this group and essentially divide up that outline to little bits and pieces that each of us are willing to do to accomplish what we've been talking about. I'd very much appreciate everybody's input. James, any other comments?
Nope, I think that's good.
Hey, Bill, could you shoot me over that east plan there?
I sure can. I'll do that for everybody, but it's very easy to find on the website. Just
Okay,
go to.
I'll just Google it.
Yeah, it's very easy to find. It's very difficult to get through. It's thick, and
Yeah.
it's. I mean, I've had to try to go through it several times to even get a basic understanding of it. But if all of you could use the East Area Plan as a little bit of homework, as a way to get familiar with what the plan document will look like, and that'll prepare us well for Naomi taking us through it and giving us some of her expertise come January.
Hey, while you guys are at it on NPI, go look at the toolkit. And this, we didn't bring this up, but there is something in the toolkit that could help us. And just a second here, basically there's a way to let's say, here's an idea that I had earlier on when we thought it was a year ago. So we never really did anything with it, but you can get, you know, people engaged and taking pictures of broken sidewalks and posting these pictures up into this toolkit area that becomes a record. And there's a way to do that. I think we could deploy people, like, here it is. The people walking their kids to school, take a picture of all the broken sidewalks, throw the pictures up into this toolkit. These people get engaged through that process. So look at the toolkit before we kind of meet again to see if there's anything within that can be leveraged for the engagement.
Everybody, have a great evening. Thank you for joining us, and we'll look
Guys.
to reconvene in a couple weeks.
I just copied
Thank you.
the chat for this entire meeting. I'm going to include that in the meeting minutes.
Thanks, Philip.
Thanks for
Cool,
keeping
thanks,
the
guys.
minutes.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Everybody,
Bye.
Bye-bye.
please, happy Hanukkah for anybody tonight.
Tonight,
Thanks.
starts tonight.
Oh, it's here.
Happy Hanukkah, Naomi. Have
Happy
a good night.
Hanukkah.
Bye, y'all.
Hanukkah. Thanks for joining on Hanukkah. Wow. All right.